Mr. James. My name is Ava, and I'm going to be discussing the Cannon-Bard theory and the James-Lange theory. The Cannon-Bard theory states that when you're crying or have some kind of physiological response, it's because of the emotion you feel, because you're sad about something. Something happens to you, so you feel sad, so then your body's response to that is you start crying. The James-Lange theory is that this crying is the reason why you feel sad. Like, you start crying or you have some kind of physiological response to stress or whatever, and then your body's like, oh, I'm crying because I'm sad. I didn't know I was sad before, which doesn't really make sense to me. The James-Lange theory was proposed independently by a psychologist named William James and a physiologist named Carl Lange, so that's why it's a James-Lange theory, because it's both their names. Then later in the 1920s, Walter Cannon and Philip Bard proposed their own theory, which was the Cannon-Bard theory, again, both their names, because they did not agree with the James-Lange theory. The two theories are kind of relatively similar, but also exactly the opposite at the same time, because they both say, like, they're both dealing with the physiological response and the emotion, but there's one is saying that one happens before the other and one causes the other. And I don't really think the James-Lange theory makes any sense, because I don't think I've ever, like, cried or started laughing, because I was happy before I knew I was feeling an emotion. Usually I think the Cannon-Bard makes sense, because if something happens to you that makes you sad, you start crying and you know why you're crying. Or if someone tells a joke and you laugh, you're not like, oh my god, I'm laughing, it must be funny. Like, you know it's funny, so you start laughing. But the only time that I would think the James-Lange theory might hold some truth is, like, if you're watching a movie or something, and it's like a sad movie and something sad happens, and all of a sudden you start to get choked up and you think, wow, I didn't know I was that invested in the movie. You didn't really think about it that much, but all of a sudden you're having a physiological response. So that, I guess, ties more into the James-Lange theory than it does the Cannon-Bard theory, but I still think in relation to, like, everyday life and most things that happen to you, you know why you're crying or laughing or feeling this physiological response first before you actually have the response. And also there are times when, like, obviously I've been sad and probably could have cried, but I've held back the crying because I know it would have been inappropriate in the situation or whatever, for whatever reason. But that wouldn't make any sense if crying always comes first, because then you'd all of a sudden be like, oh my god, I didn't even know I was sad, now I'm crying in public. But like, I'm feeling really sad, but I'm going to hold this back because I can't display this right now. And the same thing happens with, like, feeling happy and laughing. You don't all of a sudden start laughing out of nowhere, and I mean, you do, but you usually know why. Someone says something funny or whatever, and you hold back your laughter because you know you can't do it right then. So it wouldn't make sense for the physiological response to come first. Thank you for watching my comparison video on the James-Lange theory and the Cannon-Bard theory.